let me say, striking differences between development planning now and development planning in the immediate aftermath of independence is a commitment at nation building that would benefit everyone in the nation. The other is the coordinated attempt at nation building. But at the time at independence, the politics of it was really important. The clarity about who is a development actor, who should be the final beneficiary of development, and who should control resources. There was no doubt about it. So the state was in control of everything, the ideas, the resources, its distribution. The role of market forces in distribution of the outcomes of nation building was very low. But there was the ideological base, a certain level of social consciousness about development planning. So if we take a look at Ghana and Tanzania, which were the two countries I compared, and I compared because then these were experiments that stand out even till now. People look back at them with nostalgia in terms of what they really presented for Africa. And the fact that whatever gains that were made are still fundamental to they form the basis of whatever is holding the nations together currently. So if we take the case of Ghana, for example, we talk about the distribution of nation building facilities, education, health facilities, and all that. And the attempt at bringing everybody together so that the seemingly political stabilities and the absence of striking ethnic divisions that appear in other places that sometimes erupt in violence, for example, that seems to be rather low in Ghana. And for Tanzania, it was the point about bringing everybody together and the need for a common language. In Ghana, it was a point about spreading the benefits of nation building so that parts of the country that had been kept as labor sending reserves also could be brought in very quickly. The other point also was the understanding that you needed to have control, not only over the human resource that was required for nation building, but you also needed to have control over the generation of research. And so the institutions that were set up to do research, the institutions that were set up also to coordinate their research activities and all that. But what's most important was the fact that these nations felt that they needed their own plans and set out to develop the plans and felt that they had control and they could do it and therefore should do it. So one big part of it is the Africanization of key planning sectors. It had to be Africans that were doing it, had to be Ghanaians and all that. And then the point also that it wasn't just a national endeavor, it was also a continental endeavor. The fact that there should be ownership in terms of thought, there should be ownership in terms of resources, and there should also be ownership in terms of who is at the driving seat of this nation building efforts. So the feminist analysis of post-independent policies were striking for me because, you know, one had always known that women played a leading role in the nationalist struggle. But then we've said that history really is his story. So you had once in a while, a few women's name will come up in all this. But in doing this work, The striking thing was the role women played and the way in which different analytical tools that are submitted to examine the role women played tends to then make them invisible. So taking a look from a feminist perspective, it becomes very clear how women were critical to this. And finally, when development comes their way, they no longer are seen as the critical movers of nation building. So what do I mean by this? You find out that in both Ghana and Tanzania, they were really women who were operating in as traders. There were women operating outside the confines of a formal economic setup, which is wage work, professional work, and all that. And you find that it was easy for these women, first of all, to be engaged in the nationalist struggle, because then we are told in Tanzania, for example, especially the formal workers, the whole fear of losing their jobs, and it was more easy to target them, which was not the case for women in traders. It was not the case for traders, because then they were not wage workers. So you find out that in the case of Tanzania, Bibi Titi, for example, when she was invited to meet a group, she was able to negotiate so that she could have more space within that group. You find also that in Ghana, these women understood also that moving the political space required proud visits to the communities, even before the party activities could take place. Proud visits to the communities, working out and mobilizing people. And the interesting thing also was a choice of messages. So messages in terms of the songs they were able to compose as a mobilizing spot, but even the use of cloth also, and the messages that these cloth carried, and how then they became the basis for mobilizing. So these mobilization tools that these women adopted, really very striking. The disappointment, really, which is still a lesson also, is how the very basis of nation building, mobilizing and bringing some visibility to the to the exploitative nature of colonial rule that was carried in the work of these women was not mobilized for nation building, I must say. I think that's lost opportunity, because the nation building, which also was seen as modernization, immediately rid these women of their political power, of their clout, and their ability to find an independent space and bring into that space their own organizational skills. So in adopting the feminist lens, even though women were an important development constituency, women could only make a credible contribution to development if they have formal education. Mainly people who are looking for formal sector jobs. So formal sector job was seen as what would liberate women, and women who did not have a background to benefit from formal sector jobs could not find their own feet. One is also carried into the narratives of the whole story of our nation building, so that these women, in terms of how they are celebrated, how they are accounted for, and in Ghana, when we are talking about founders of the nation, and who spent time in jail, we hardly ever talk about women like 60-year-old Audua Ankara, who suffered time in colonial prisons on account of activism. Queer Sabia, you see, Dankwa, and nobody is thinking about these women. Now, in terms of striking things, I think that for me is one is the understanding of the connection between the national economy and the international economy. The second also is the vision of these two presidents, that the successes within their countries is built on the connectivity within the continent, and that connectivity is not what is carried right now into the African Union, and that has given us the continental free trade agreement. But that connectivity that builds self-sufficiency, but then self-sufficiency in ways that can rid dependence on international political forces. There was that clarity about the need to have a national base, the need to have control over national resources. But what was missing in terms of carrying this clarity ahead is still the fallback on international political capital as a basis for developing their nations. And I think that this was almost like shooting themselves in their foot, because Nkrumah was very clear and all that. And the fact that there was the expectation that international foreign capital was going to sit and wait patiently and help them build their nations so that they can be independent of them. So these striking things, is how there was so much political clarity with these early presidents. They knew what the problem was and what to do, and how now subsequent ones appear to believe that they can develop within the political current political economic framework, and that's more borrowing will do the job for them, and no questioning of the place of the countries, of the two countries, of the nations within and how we are connected into the international political era. And that's also, and one of the things I went into this exercise was that, why did the Tanzanian experiment last so long? Why did it get buy-in from the Western nations? Because there was a lot of donor funding for it. And the answer for me was the extent to which capital felt threatened. And very clearly, Nkrumah was a bigger threat than Tanzania, even though there are lessons to that, so that the transformative potential of Ghana appeared to be higher than that in Tanzania, which was reformist. So two things: the clear political statement that these experiments carried, the absence of a feminist outlook, a critical feminist outlook, not just any feminist outlook, that could have framed the way in which women were incorporated within the development plans at that time, in ways that could have built on the mobilizing power of women, and therefore built a stronger political base to own these processes. And then the comprehensiveness of the connectivity between all aspects of nation building, agriculture connected to industrialization, research, supposed to inform industrialization. And then industrialization's focus also was nation building and the worker as a carrying agent of this process. The carrying agent is also the beneficiary. That finally, the inability to appreciate the strength of the very political forces that were trying to win their nations off, which finally became the weakest point in the process, and therefore made the process vulnerable to be undermined and finally to be completely brought down.